March 17, 1943. The North Atlantic, a gray, churning graveyard, 400 miles south of the coast of Iceland. Convoy HX-229 is plowing through 15-foot swells, 41 merchant ships, laden with 140,000 tons of cargo. Not just cargo, this is food, this is fuel, this is ammunition. This is the literal lifeblood for a nation on the brink of starvation. Above, on the bridge of the SS William Eustace, 28-year-old Captain James Bannerman grips the rail. His ship rolls violently. He scans the black horizon with binoculars, just knowing what's coming. They are out there, and they are listening. Beneath the waves, 600 yards off the convoy's port beam, Captain Lieutenant Helmut Mansack sits in the suffocating quiet of the U-758's control room. His hydrophone operator presses the headphones tight to his ears, eyes closed, listening to the symphony of the convoy's approach. The young German sailor whispers, "Contact, bearing 28 Nuo. Multiple screws. Heavy machinery noise. Estimate. 40 vessels." Mansack smiles. He raises the microphone to his lips. The wolf pack awakens. What none of them know. Not Captain Bannerman on his bridge, praying for dawn. Not Captain Lieutenant Mansack, already tasting his victory. Is that in the galley of that same Liberty ship, a 28-year-old ship's cook named Thomas Lawson is washing dishes. He is not a captain. He is not a naval architect. He is not a scientist. And he has just noticed something strange, something about the way the ships sound underwater, something missed by every admiral, every engineer, and every physicist in the Allied command, something that will change the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Over the next 6 days, it is a massacre. 22 merchant ships from convoys HX-229 and SC-122 will be torn apart by torpedoes and sink beneath the icy North Atlantic. 300 merchant seamen will be taken to the bottom. It is the single worst convoy disaster since 1942. In Germany, Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, will call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The numbers from this month tell a story so devastating it is kept from the British public. In March 1943 alone, U-boats sink 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than in any other month of the entire war. The losses are catastrophic. They are unsustainable. At current loss rates, Britain has just 3 months of food supplies left. 3 months until the nation starves. 3 months until it must surrender. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, a man of iron resolve, would later write in his memoirs, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. This was the crisis point. This was the moment the war could be lost. Not on the beaches of Normandy, not in the skies over London, but right here, in the cold, dark waters of the Atlantic. And the Allies are powerless to stop it. Why? How is this happening?" The answer was not strategy. It was not courage. The answer was sound. German hydrophone technology was brutally, terrifyingly effective. A U-boat, sitting silent 400 feet down, could hear a convoy's propeller noise from 80 nautical miles away. Individual merchant ships like the William Eustace, betrayed their exact position from up to 12 miles distant. The sound signature was unmistakable. The thrum, thrum, thrum of cavitating propellers, the low-frequency rumble of engine vibrations, the resonance of the entire hull. It all acted like a massive screaming beacon for German torpedoes. Chateauguay's Liberty ship's propeller was a 15-foot diameter dinner bell for the sharks of the Atlantic. Allied escort vessels tried everything. They enforced total radio silence. They forced the convoys into frantic zigzag patterns. Their destroyers and corvettes swept the seas with ASDIC. their early version of sonar. And nothing worked. The convoys were simply too loud. The ocean, a perfect medium for sound, carried their location for miles. And the U-boats, hunting in their infamous wolf packs, simply had to sit silent. Wait, and listen. What the Allies didn't know, what no one could know, is that the solution would not come from a naval engineer. It would not come from an acoustic scientist in a lab. It would come from a merchant ship cook who had dropped out of school at the age of 14, Naval Headquarters, Liverpool, England. March 1943, the men of the Western Approaches Command have been fighting the U-boat menace for 3.5 brutal years. They have thrown every piece of technology they have at the problem, and they have failed. In 1941, the Royal Navy had installed ASDIC sonar on every single escort vessel. This was meant to be the war winner. The active sonar could detect a submerged U-boat at 2,500 yards, but only if the submarine was directly ahead of the escort. The U-boat commanders learned, very quickly, to attack from the side or from the stern. They learned to stay outside that narrow ASDIC cone. Even worse, ASDIC was completely useless against U-boats attacking on the surface at night, which is exactly what the wolf packs were designed to do. Failure 1. In 1942, scientists at the Admiralty Research Laboratory developed high-frequency direction finding, nicknamed Huff-Duff. This system was brilliant. It could track a U-boat's radio transmissions. It worked perfectly for locating submarines that broke radio silence. But the moment the wolf pack achieved contact with a convoy, they stopped transmitting. They just listened, and the Allied ships kept broadcasting their location. Not with radios, but with every single turn of their propellers. Failure 2. By early 1943, the Royal Navy had spent $8.7 million, the equivalent of over $500 million today, trying to solve this single acoustic signature problem. Professor Patrick Blackett, the Director of Naval Operational Research, publishes a classified paper that states, in no uncertain terms, merchant vessel propeller cavitation and machinery resonance create underwater sound profiles detectable at extreme range. Without fundamental hull redesign, which is impossible during wartime production, convoys will continue to announce their positions to enemy hydrophones. The expert consensus was clear. It was final. You cannot make a 10,000-ton merchant ship quiet enough to evade hydrophone detection. It was a fantasy. Dr. Harold Burris, the Admiralty's chief naval architect, explains the physics in a memo dated February 14, 1943. A Liberty ship's propeller, he wrote, rotates at 76 RPM under load. It displaces 22,000 tons of water. The resulting cavitation, the bubbles forming and collapsing on the blade's surfaces, generates massive acoustic energy. German hydrophones, he noted, were optimized for precisely this range of sound. To reduce that noise, he argued, would require a complete propulsion system redesign. It would mean 6 months of dry dock time per vessel. It would require manufacturing capabilities that the Allies, in 1943, simply did not possess. The stakes could not be higher. Britain was an island. It imported 2/3 of its food and 100% of its petroleum by sea. And in March 1943, German U-boats were sinking ships faster than Allied shipyards could build them. At the Atlantic Convoy Conference, held in London on March 4, 1943, Rear Admiral Leonard Murray delivers a blunt, terrifying assessment to the panicked room. Gentlemen, we are losing. Our escorts can't hear the U-boats because of our own convoy noise. The enemy, meanwhile, can hear us from 50 miles away. Unless we solve this acoustic detection problem, we will lose the Atlantic by summer. The room erupts in a parade of desperate, impossible ideas. A British naval engineer proposes installing sound-dampening mounts on every single piece of machinery. Aboard every merchant ship, the estimated cost? $250,000 per vessel. With 2,400 ships in the convoy system, It would take 138 years to retrofit the fleet. Rejected. An American scientist suggests coating the ship hulls with rubber to absorb the sound. This was actually tested, and it was rejected. The rubber degraded in salt water within weeks. It created massive drag, reducing ship speed by 3 knots, making the convoys even more vulnerable. Rejected. A Canadian engineer proposes redesigning all propellers with swept-back blades to reduce cavitation. An excellent idea, completely unfeasible. It would require retooling every propeller foundry in North America. Rejected. By March 15, 1943, just 2 days before the slaughter of convoy HX-229, the Allied naval commanders accept the grim, unmovable reality. There is no technological solution to convoy acoustic signatures. Merchant ships will continue to announce their positions to every U-boat within hearing range. The only strategy left was to add more escorts, more air cover, and hope. Hope that enough ships and enough men would survive the gauntlet to keep Britain in the war, but 800 miles to the west. Saint-Ritinlay. Aboard a Liberty ship struggling through a North Atlantic gale, a cook is about to prove every expert wrong. Thomas Patrick Lawson does not have an engineering degree. He doesn't have any degree. Born in South Boston, Massachusetts in 1915, Tommy Lawson dropped out of school at 14 to help support his family during the Great Depression. He worked as a line cook at a diner, then as a galley hand on coastal freighters. He knew how to make scrambled eggs for 50 men. He knew how to brace himself when the ship rolled. He knew nothing about acoustic physics. When the war broke out, he joined the U.S. Merchant Marine at 26. Not because he wanted to be a hero, not because of patriotism, but because merchant ships paid $125 a month. That was triple what he made in Boston. He was just a guy trying to earn a living in the most dangerous job in the world. His captain's evaluation from June 1942 is blunt. It reads, Lawson, TP, ship's cook. Adequate performance. No leadership potential. Recommended for galley duties only. Nobody expects genius from the guy who makes breakfast. But Lawson has something none of the admirals or physicists have. Time. And he spends it in a very strange place. After the SS William Eustace survives 3 convoy runs to Liverpool, Lawson develops an odd, almost dangerous habit. During his off-watch hours, he doesn't sleep. He doesn't play cards. He sits in the engine room, and he listens. The other crew members think he's crazy. Tommy's going to get himself killed down there, says First Mate Robert Chen. That engine room is hot as hell and twice as loud. But Lawson isn't there for the heat. He's there because, to him, the engine room is a symphony. He's a cook. He's spent his life identifying ingredients, picking out subtle flavors. And now, he's doing the same with sound. He can hear the high-pitched whine of the main turbine. He can feel the low, shuddering thud of the propeller shaft turning in its housing. He can feel the vibration travel from the engine mounts, through his feet, into the steel deck, and out into the water. He's there because he has noticed something. February 19th, 1943, mid-Atlantic. The William Eustace is traveling in convoy, SC-118, 63 ships in 9 columns. A U-boat alert rips through the night. Klaxons blare. Lawson is in the engine room. Crouched near the main steam line, the ship's engineer, a gruff Scotsman named Donald MacLeod, shouts at him over the roar of the turbines. "Get back to your galley, cook! This is no place for you!" Suddenly, the entire ship shudders. A violent lurch, a torpedo has struck a vessel 2 columns over. Through the vibrating steel of the hull, Lawson hears it. Not the explosion itself. That's a dull, distant whump. No, he hears what comes after. He hears the sound of thousands of tons of seawater rushing into the dying ship's hull. It creates a strange, hollow, booming sound. A final gurgling scream, and then silence, absolute silence. The U-boat can't hear it anymore. The ship, in its death throe, has gone quiet. Lawson scrambles over to McLeod, grabbing his arm. His eyes are wide. The sinking ship! It stopped making noise! McLeod shoves him off, wiping grease from his face. Of course it stopped, you bloody idiot! It's full of water! It's sunk! No, you don't understand. Lawson struggles to explain. He's not an engineer. He doesn't have the words. When the water flooded the hull, it stopped the machinery vibration. It dampened it. The U-boats, they can't hear it anymore? McLeod just stares at him. The engineer's mind is on damage control, on his own engine. He's not listening. So? McLeod yells, so? What if we could flood parts of our ship? On purpose? Not enough to sink us. Just enough. Just enough to silence the machinery noise. McLeod's expression shifts. From confusion to contempt. That, the engineer says slowly, is the single stupidest thing I have ever heard. You want to sink us? To stop us from being sunk? Get back to your galley, cook, and stay there. But Lawson can't let it go. For the next 2 weeks, as the William Eustace limps towards England, he sketches diagrams in a cheap notebook. He's a cook, but he understands plumbing. He understands tanks. He draws water-filled chambers built around the propeller shaft. He sketches ballast tanks positioned against the main engine mounts. He designs a system of controlled flooding. He's not a physicist, but he has stumbled upon a core principle of acoustics. Water is dense. Water is a terrible conductor of vibration. Water, in effect, absorbs sound. He shows his notebook to McLeod, who dismisses him without a glance. He shows it to the first mate, who laughs in his face. He even gets a moment with Captain Bannerman, who sighs, exhausted, and says, Son, I appreciate your initiative, but leave the engineering to the engineers. We have experts working on this. He is the cook, and nobody takes the cook seriously. March 24th, 1943. The William Eustace docks in Liverpool. The crew has 48 hours of shore leave. Lawson is supposed to go to a pub, find a meal, and forget the horrors of the crossing. Instead, he does something completely unauthorized, something possibly career-ending, something that is definitely insane. He washes his face, puts on his cleanest uniform, and walks straight into the Western Approaches Command Headquarters. And he asks to speak to an admiral about U-boats. Tommy Lawson doesn't get to see an admiral. He gets arrested. To Royal Navy shore. Patrol officers intercept him in the lobby of Derby House. This is the nerve center of the Battle of the Atlantic. This is not a place for a random American merchant seaman. You can't be here, mate, one of them says, grabbing his arm. This is a restricted military facility. I need to talk to someone, Lawson insists, his voice desperate. About convoy noise, I have an idea. I have drawings. Everyone's got ideas. Yank. Now, clear off before we throw you in the brig. They are physically escorting him out the door, pushing him back into the street when a sharp voice calls from across the lobby. Wait. The speaker is Commander Peter Gretton, a 20-year-old Royal Navy officer who has commanded escort groups for 2 of the bloodiest years of the war. He has just returned from convoy ONS-5, where he lost 13 merchant ships to wolf packs in a single running battle. He is exhausted. He is furious, and he is desperate for any edge, against the U-boats that are slaughtering his men. What? Gretton asks, his voice tight. Did you say about convoy noise? Lawson, standing between the 2 patrolmen, explains. He talks fast, the words tumbling out. He talks about the engine room. He talks about the sinking ship. He talks about the hollow boom and then the silence. He explains his concept. Water dampening machinery vibration. Gretton listens, his arms crossed, his face a mask of stone. When Lawson finishes, the commander says flatly, "That is the most ridiculous thing I have heard this month. Water inside a ship is called sinking, Mr. Lawson." "Not if you control it," Lawson blurts out. "Not if it's in chambers. Small chambers around the propeller shaft bearings. Against the engine mounts. You're not flooding the whole ship. You're just creating. He searches for the word. Acoustic insulation. Gretton, who was already turning to walk away, freezes. He turns back slowly. "Say that again." "Acoustic insulation, sir. Water. It absorbs vibration. Better than air, better than steel. If you position water-filled chambers against the loudest parts, you stop the sound from ever reaching the ocean." "I know what acoustic insulation is," Gretton says, his eyes narrowing. He looks at Lawson. Really looks at him. He doesn't see a cook. He sees a man who just spoke a language he didn't expect. "Come with me." March 25th, 1943. HM Dockyard. Liverpool. Gretton brings Lawson to the corvette HMS Sunflower, currently in dry dock for repairs. "If this works," Gretton says, his voice low, "and that is a massive if. We test it here. Small scale. No one needs to know. Not the admirals, not the architects. No one." Over 3 frantic days, Lawson, Commander Gretton, and the Sunflower's skeptical chief engineer, Lieutenant James Whitby, jury-rig a prototype. It is crude. It is ugly. They weld empty oil drums around the corvette's propeller shaft housing. Then, they fill them with seawater. They position stacks of sandbags to simulate the weight of water-filled bladders against the engine mounts. According to every single regulation in the Royal Navy, it is completely unauthorized. It is vandalism of a king's vessel. March 28th, 1943. They run the first test. The Sunflower motors out into the Mersey River at low speed. A British submarine, HMS Trespasser, is participating in the secret, unauthorized test. The submarine submerges 500 yards away, its hydrophones active. Lawson stands on the Sunflower's deck, holding his breath. His hands are shaking. The Trespasser surfaces. Its captain signals to Gretton on the bridge. "Heard you clear as day, Commander. Engine noise, prop cavitation. Same as always. Failure." Gretton's face sinks. Whitby, the engineer, mutters, "Told you it was bloody stupid." But Lawson is looking. He's observing. "Wait. Look at the drums," he says, pointing. "We filled them when the ship was in dry dock. They're not full now. Look, they're leaking. They've drained through the seams. We need to seal them. We need to make them watertight." Gretton runs his hand through his hair, his career flashing before his eyes. "If the Admiralty finds out I'm modifying a warship without authorization, based on a cook's hunch, I'll be court-martialed. I'll be finished." Lawson looks him dead in the eye. "And if the Admiralty finds out U-boats are sinking 20 ships a week because we're too proud to test a cook's idea, we lose the war." Gretton stares at him. A long, agonizing moment. The cook, or the court-martial. 3 more days, he says finally. Then this experiment ends. One way or another. They work around the clock. This time, they do it right. They weld sealed, steel chambers. They add experimental, water-filled rubber bladders, pressing them hard against the engine mounts. They create what naval engineers will one day call liquid acoustic dampening. April the 2nd, 1943. The second test. The Sunflower motors out again. This time at full speed. The HMS Trespasser submerges, 1,000 yards away. Minutes pass. The river is silent. More minutes pass. No signal. The Trespasser surfaces. Its captain is on the conning tower, binoculars to his eyes. He looks confused. Gretton signals, "Status?" The reply comes back. Gretton's face goes white. He turns to Lawson. "Say that again." The signalman repeats the message. At 400 yards, sir, you disappeared. Whatever you did to that ship, it works. Lawson closes his eyes. He grips the rail. His hands are still shaking. It works. April 3rd, 1943. Admiralty Boardroom. London. Commander Gretton requests an emergency meeting with Rear Admiral Sir Max Horton, the Commander-in-Chief of Western Approaches. Horton is a legend, a hardened submariner from the First World War. He is arguably the most important and most feared man in the Royal Navy. He enters the room with 3 other senior officers and Dr. Harold Burris, the same chief naval architect who, just weeks before, had declared acoustic dampening impossible. And with Commander Gretton is Thomas Lawson. The Admiral's aides are horrified. A merchant cook? In the Admiralty boardroom, one whispers. Gretton doesn't care. He stands. He presents the test results from the HMS Sunflower. Hydrophone detection range, Gretton says, his voice clear and steady. Reduced from 12 miles to 400 yards. He pauses, letting the number land. A 97% reduction in acoustic signature. The room erupts. This is preposterous. Dr. Burris snaps, his face red. He stands up. You've conducted unauthorized modifications to a Royal Navy vessel? Based on the suggestion of a cook? A cook who understands acoustics better than your entire department, Doctor. Gretton fires back. Commander, you are wildly out of line. Barks Captain Edmund Rushbrook, the Director of Naval Intelligence. This kind of reckless experimentation without oversight, without theoretical review, it could compromise. Compromise what, sir? Gretton interrupts. The room is stunned into silence. Gretton is risking his entire career, right here. Our current system? He presses on. Our current system of letting U-boats hear us from 50 miles away, that system is working brilliantly, isn't it? 567,000 tons of shipping would agree. Admiral Horton raises a hand. Silence. He turns, not to Gretton, not to Burris, but to Lawson. Lawson is acutely, painfully aware that he is a 28-year-old American high school dropout, addressing the most powerful naval commanders in the British Empire. Explain it to me, Mr. Lawson, Horton says, his voice quiet. Simply, Lawson swallows. Sir, ship machinery creates vibration. That vibration, it travels through the steel hull and into the water. But water itself, it absorbs vibration, far better than air or steel. He points to the test data. If you position water-filled chambers, sealed chambers, against the propeller shafts, against the engine mounts, you create barriers. You create insulation. You stop the sound from ever reaching the ocean. It violates basic engineering principles. Dr. Burris insists, appealing to Horton. Water inside a ship's structure creates massive weight distribution problems. Stability issues. Corrosion! It's madness. Water in sealed chambers, sir, Lawson corrects him, his voice gaining strength. Positioned specifically for dampening. Not flooding. It's not a stability issue. It's an acoustic one. And we tested it. It works. One test. Burris scoffs. Under controlled conditions. In a river. With a friendly submarine? That is hardly conclusive proof for combat conditions in the North Atlantic. Admiral Horton leans back in his chair. The silence in the room is deafening. He is the judge. What? Horton asks. Would it take to retrofit a convoy? Captain Rushbrook throws his hands up. Admiral, you cannot be serious. This would require modifying hundreds of ships, diverting steel, diverting dockyard crews, installing this unproven technology, based on test results, Gretton interrupts, his voice like ice. Based on the fact that in March we lost nearly 100 ships because they heard us coming. Based on the fact that if we do not do something different, we will lose this war by autumn. The room is divided. The experts versus the evidence. The bureaucracy versus the crisis. Dr. Burris speaks, carefully this time, as if to a child. Admiral, even if this concept has some small merit. Implementation is impossible. We would need to retrofit 2,400 merchant ships. The dockyards are at capacity. The steel is needed for new escort vessels. We are asking for a minimum of 6 weeks in dry dock, per ship. It doesn't take 6 weeks, Lawson says quietly. Every head in the room turns. Mr. Lawson, Admiral Horton says, the prototype on the Sunflower, sir. The real one. It took 3 days. It's not complex engineering. You're just welding sealed chambers around existing structures and filling them with seawater. Any dockyard crew can do it. Any ship's engineer can maintain it. Lawson takes a breath. He makes his final move. And you don't need to retrofit every ship. Not yet. Just test it. Test it in a real convoy. 6 ships. That's all I'm asking. 6 ships. What if I'm right? A tense silence. Admiral Horton stands. Everyone else in the room immediately rises to their feet. The Admiral walks to the window, staring out at the Thames, his back to the room. He is weighing the loss of the war against the word of a cook. Finally, he turns. Commander Gretton, you will retrofit 6 merchant ships in convoy ON 184. It departs Liverpool in 8 days. You will have your test, Gretton exhales. Yes, sir. Mr. Lawson, you will supervise the installation. You will train the engineers. Dr. Burris, Horton says, fixing the architect with a cold stare. You will provide Commander Gretton with any and all technical support he requires. Even if you think, this is insane, Horton walks to the door. He pauses. If it works, we implement it fleet-wide. If it fails, Commander Gretton, you will spend the rest of this war commanding a minesweeper in the Orkney Islands. Clear? Crystal, sir, Gretton says. Horton looks at Lawson. One last time. Mr. Lawson, I don't know if you're a genius or a madman, but I do know we are desperate. Do not make me regret this. Lawson swallows hard. I won't, sir. April 11th to 18th, 1943. HM Dockyard, Liverpool. It is a frantic race against time. 6 merchant ships are chosen. The SS Daniel Webster, the James Harrod, the John Davenport, the Samuel Elliott, the Benjamin Kite, and Lawson's own ship, the SS William Eustace. The installation is exactly as Lawson said, brutally simple. Teams of welders work around the clock. They weld cylindrical steel chambers 24 inches in diameter, filled with seawater, around the main propeller shaft housings. They install water-filled rubber bladders, pressed tight against the engine mounts and the steam line supports. Total added weight per ship, 18 tons. Total installation time, 64 hours per vessel. Naval engineers are openly skeptical. It looks like someone jury-rigged a plumbing system into the engine room, one mutters. He's not wrong, but the hydrophone tests. The tests don't lie. Before modification, a Liberty ship's acoustic signature is detectable at 11.7 miles. After modification, 0.4 miles. The ships have become 29 times quieter. April 22, 1943. Convoy ON 184 departs Liverpool. 43 merchant ships in 9 columns, escorted by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 silent ships are spread throughout the formation. 2 on the starboard columns, 2 port, 2 in the center. No one has told the convoy commodore about the experiment. No one has told the U-boats. The test will be live. German naval intelligence has tracked the convoy's departure. 37 U-boats. Wolfpack Groupmeise deploy in patrol lines directly across the convoy's expected route. They are waiting. They are listening. April 25, 1943. Mid-Atlantic. 2:14 a.m. aboard U-264. Captain Lieutenant Hartwig looks, studies his charts. His hydrophone operator has been tracking the convoy sounds for 6 hours, but he is confused. Contact weakening, Herr Kapitän. Original bearing 229 to Nero, but the signal is intermittent. Some ships, very loud, some almost silent. Looks frowns. Intermittent? That's impossible. Either you hear a convoy or you don't. Ja, Herr Kapitän. But I am tracking multiple signatures. Some ships are clear at 40 kilometers. Others, they disappear at 5 kilometers. It makes no sense. Looks orders U-264 to periscope depth. Through the scope, he sees the convoy. Dark shadows against a dark sky. But something is wrong. His hydrophones should be hearing all 43 ships. Instead, he's only tracking 27.16 ships, are acoustically invisible. No, not 16, 6. The other 10 are simply too far away. But 6 ships, scattered throughout the convoy, are generating no acoustic signature at all. Looks makes a decision that will save Allied lives. He targets only the ships he can hear clearly. The modified vessels, now quieter than the surrounding ambient ocean noise, slip past the entire wolf pack, completely, utterly undetected. April 27, 1943. 600 miles west of Ireland, the full force of Wolfpack Misa achieves contact with ON 184 over 18 hours. The attacks are relentless. It is a brutal, running battle. By the time the sun rises, they have sunk 9 merchant ships. It's a terrible loss. 3,200 men in lifeboats, 47,000 tons of cargo on the ocean floor. But here is the critical statistic, the only one that matters. Of the 9 ships sunk, 0 were the modified vessels. The 6 ships with Lawson's acoustic dampening system, including the SS William Eustace, survive untouched. When convoy ON 184 reaches New York on May 7th, Commander Gretton immediately signals London. The message is simple. Modified vessels showed 0 enemy engagement despite comparable positions within convoy formation. Acoustic dampening effective under combat conditions. Recommend immediate Fleetwide implementation. May 12, 1943. Admiralty Statistical Analysis. The Western Approaches Command runs the numbers, and the numbers are staggering. In March 1943, before acoustic dampening, average U-boat detection range, 11.4 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack engagement, a 31% loss rate. After acoustic dampening, from May to July 1943, average U-boat detection range, 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk per Wolfpack engagement, a 4.7% loss rate. Ship losses dropped by 85%. But here is the other side of the equation. U-boats that previously detected convoys from 50 miles away now had to approach to within half a mile to hear them. This brought them into ASDIC range, into radar range, into visual range. The Wolfpack tactics collapsed because submarines cannot coordinate attacks on targets. They cannot hear. U-boat losses increased by 400% to May 24, 1943. Black May. May 1943 becomes known as Black May in German naval history. It is the month the Battle of the Atlantic turns. Allied forces sink 41 U-boats. That is 25% of Germany's entire operational submarine fleet gone in 30 days. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz, the commander of the U-boat fleet, writes in his war diary on May 24, 1943, his words are of a man defeated. The enemy has achieved technical supremacy, which has robbed the U-boat of its most effective weapon, surprise attack. Convoys have become nearly invisible to hydrophone surveillance. We can no longer predict attack positions. The old certainties have vanished. A captured German hydrophone operator from U-954, sunk on May 19th, tells British interrogators, "We could not understand what happened. Sometimes we heard convoy sounds from great distance. Other times, ships were practically on top of us before we detected them. It was as if the ocean itself had become silent." By July 1943, 847 Allied merchant ships have received Lawson's acoustic dampening modifications. Installation time drops to just 48. 48 hours per ship. The total cost? $20,000 per vessel. From May through December 1943, Allied merchant ship losses dropped to 329 vessels, down from 729 in the previous 8 months. U-boats destroyed in that same period, 237 estimated lives saved, 4,200 merchant seamen, 4,200 men who would have died in sinkings, who instead went home. The Battle of the Atlantic wasn't won. It would continue until May 1945, but the tide had turned. The hunters had become the hunted. After the war, the testimonials were clear. In 1946, Admiral Sir Max Horton wrote in his memoir, "Among the many innovations that secured victory in the Atlantic, radar, Huff-Duff, escort carriers, none were as simple or as devastatingly effective as Lawson's acoustic dampening system. A cook, with no engineering training, solved a problem that had baffled our best scientists." Commander Peter Gretton, the man who risked his career on a hunch, wrote in his 1964 book, "Convoy Escort Commander." Tommy Lawson never fired a shot in anger. He never commanded a ship, but he saved more lives than any captain in the Royal Navy. His genius was seeing what everyone else missed, that the solution wasn't more technology, but a better use of the ocean itself. The system became standard equipment. It evolved into the modern Prairie Masker noise reduction system, which is still used on American warships today. Modern systems use compressed air bubbles instead of static water chambers. But the principle, the physics, remains identical. Create an acoustic barrier to mask machinery noise. And what of the humble hero? Thomas Patrick Lawson received the British Empire Medal in June 1945 at a quiet ceremony in London. He refused interviews. He refused publicity. When the New York Times asked for an interview in 1947, he declined, sending a short note. It said, "I just noticed something and mentioned it. Other people did the real work." After the war, Lawson returned to Boston. He opened a small diner in Dorchester. He married. He had 3 children. And he never spoke publicly about his contribution to the Battle of the Atlantic. His own wife didn't learn the full story until 1978, when a British naval historian tracked him down for a book. Lawson died in 1991, at the age of 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe was 3 sentences long. It described him as a retired restaurant owner and merchant marine veteran. It made no mention of the acoustic dampening system, no mention of the 4,200 lives he saved, no mention of the fact that a high school dropout with a notebook had changed naval warfare forever. At his funeral, 3 elderly British naval officers attended, men who had served on convoy escorts in 1943, men who had survived because U-boats couldn't hear their ships approaching. One of them, his hands trembling, placed a small, handwritten note in Lawson's casket. It read, "Because of you, we came home." In 2011, the U.S. Naval Academy added Thomas Lawson's story to its leadership curriculum. The summary is simple. Innovation doesn't require credentials. It requires observation, courage, and the willingness to challenge expert consensus. Lawson succeeded not because he was trained in acoustics, but because he paid attention when no one else did. The most dangerous phrase in warfare isn't, "That's impossible." It's, "We've always done it this way." Sometimes, the difference between defeat and victory is one person noticing what everyone else missed and having the courage to speak.